Well, thank you for being here today while we take a moment to acknowledge an important win in court. Of course, this is a lawsuit that never should have been filed and an issue that we shouldn't be fighting over, but nevertheless, opportunity to acknowledge the really good work that's being done here in Rhode Island on behalf of some of our most vulnerable residents. And because of the federal context of this, Rhode Island continues to lead the way, might I add. In a minute, we'll hear from the amazing mayor of Central Falls, Rivera. I want to acknowledge, and we'll hear from in a moment, Miriam Weisenbaum, who will be speaking on behalf of Democracy Forward's Lawyer Committee for Rhode Island, who represented us in court and continues to do excellent work on so many pressing issues that we're facing from the federal government right now. I also want to acknowledge the City of Pawtucket was an important co-plaintiff in this endeavor, and the mayor's not able to be here today, but we have representation from Pawtucket, and we could not have done it without him. The other local plaintiffs, all of whom worked together on this and were represented today, the Rhode Island State Council on Churches, Amos House, East Bay Community Action Program, Federal Hill House, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Community Center, the Milagros Project, United Way of Rhode Island, and SEIU, the Service Employees Union, along with the AFL-CIO. Thank you all for joining with us in this litigation. On behalf of the City of Providence, we're also joined by several of our colleagues from the City Council who are as concerned about food insecurity and overreach and injustice from the federal government as I am. We're joined by Councilman Juan Machado, Councilman Miguel Sanchez, Councilwoman Althea Graves. Also want to acknowledge that there's representation from Senator Whitehouse and Representative Amo's office. As our federal delegation continues to do the right thing in Washington, we deeply appreciate their leadership as we try to get critical federal programs back running again for all of our residents. And so we're here today to acknowledge that on Friday, just across Kennedy Plaza in federal court, Providence, along with the other co-plaintiffs that I mentioned, had a victory on behalf of thousands of families, seniors, and children, all of whom rely on SNAP benefits. This will provide critical relief for those families and also continue to provide relief for families across the nation because of its impact. I'm very proud to stand here in solidarity with all the organizations, churches, community leaders, other elected officials that I mentioned. Together, we are all doing everything we can to fight back against the cruel actions of the Trump administration and the Republicans in Congress who are using food as a negotiating tactic and a cudgel in their fights in Washington. This lawsuit was filed resulting in an injunction that will provide a broad-scale relief benefiting not just the people of Providence, but families across the nation. And while it's a victory for decency, fairness, and for every community working hard, as I mentioned, it is not something that we should have had to do in the first place. Suspending food aid is cruel, and to threaten the stability of families who are already struggling is wrong. The federal government has a legal obligation now to use its $6 billion contingency fund to pay SNAP benefits. That has always been the case, and the court reaffirmed that obligation, noting that the administration itself acknowledged this authority during its first term. But that contingency fund alone will not cover even all of November. The court made it clear that the federal government has the authority to use other funds to make sure that families receive their full benefits. And if the administration chooses not to utilize these additional funds, it means that they're choosing to give millions of families partial benefits instead of full benefits, even though they have the money and the legal authority to pay every eligible household in full. The court has ordered the administration to advise by noon today how it plans to comply, and we'll be watching closely to make sure families get the support they deserve. As local leaders, it's our duty to defend the well-being of our residents, and when policies threaten the stability of our communities, it is our obligation to speak up and take action. The cruel decisions made at the federal level have created serious and immediate threats to families and children across Rhode Island and right here in Providence. In our city, we estimate that there are 25,000 hardworking families, 16,000 of whom are children, who live on fixed incomes and have limited resources and rely on SNAP for food. To confront these challenges, Providence is taking meaningful action with additional support to the Rhode Island Community Food Bank by making meals available not just at school, but at our rec centers and in our community libraries. And we will continue to do our best to fill the gap. But there is no way that local government or even state government can entirely fill the gap from a federal program. And so it is incumbent upon Congress and the President to act. For those families in Providence who are in need of immediate food assistance, I would encourage you to check the city's website, providenceri.gov/food, where you can learn about the over 30 food banks in our city and understand the various ways in which we are getting emergency food in the community. For residents of Providence who do not rely on food assistance, thank you for stepping up, and I would encourage you to continue to step up to meet the need of food insecurity in our community. The various food banks and the Rhode Island Community Food Bank welcomes food donations, but it is even more effective and more efficient to make a financial donation. They are able to buy food much less expensively than you and I are. And so we're continuing to encourage people to make donations to the Rhode Island Food Bank. It's important to note that there were over 80,000 Rhode Island families who were food insecure before this crisis. And after this crisis is resolved, they will still be food insecure. And so while this is an important victory along the way, while the City of Providence and certainly the City of Central Falls and Pawtucket and the other municipalities in Rhode Island are doing their part, and have done it. We've got the lawyers who we'll hear from in a second. Food insecurity was a problem beforehand, it will be a problem afterwards. And so please continue to help your neighborhood food bank or the Rhode Island Community Food Bank. So much is happening from the federal government right now that it is up to local leaders and state leaders to fight back when their communities are threatened. One of those incredible leaders who has been at the forefront of advocating for her residents day in and day out during this administration and beyond is Mayor of Central Falls, who I'd like to invite to come share a few words, the amazing Mayor Rivera.
Good morning. I want to start by thanking Mayor Smiley and all of our partners across the country who have stood together in this fight to fiercely defend families' right to food security. I so wish we were not having this conversation right now with this press conference. I also want to recognize the powerful legal teams at Democracy Forward and the Lawyers Committee for Rhode Island who have led this case for us. Their incredible work helps secure a big legal victory for families nationwide. Thank you so much for advocating for our families. In our city of Central Falls, nearly 1 in 4 residents, more than 5,000 people rely on SNAP to feed their families. It's thousands of children in just 1 square mile, but that's simple. That means hunger touches almost every block in the city of Central Falls, every school, every classroom, and every street. When the administration decided to withhold benefits, we didn't wait for someone else to act. I'm proud Providence and Pawtucket joined us into this lawsuit and joined a national coalition of dozens of cities and organizations that refuse to stay silent because this presidential administration has failed to protect our families. On Friday, a federal judge ruled in our favor. It was a powerful decision that blocked the administration's attempt to stop SNAP benefits for millions of families. The court confirmed that we have been saying all along, our federal government has a legal obligation to keep this program going and to use its contingency funds. Today, the administration must report back on how it's going to come back. I know we will all be watching, and it's a reminder that our work is not over and we're going to continue fighting. The SNAP program is not optional. Food shouldn't be political. This is about people. It's a basic human right. Central Falls will continue fighting alongside our partners here today until every family receives the support that they are entitled to. Our city has been stepping up in big ways to fill this gap, working hand in hand with our local food pantries, and I want to give a huge thank you to the Central Falls Foundation, who this weekend we came together with, and we were able to give food to over 1,400 individuals. And this wasn't just a food pantry where they were grabbing a bag. We were allowing them to basically go food shop. They were given a cart and they were food shopping to have food for at least for 7 days, from 7 to 10 days. And if we have to do it again, which I hope we don't have to, we're gonna do it again. So I'm glad to be working hand in hand with our local food pantries, nonprofits, and community partners to organize and grow our food resources, because it's what we have to do. I know Mayor Smiley and Mayor Brett care deeply about their communities and have been stepping up to do the same, because this is how we lead. We fight in court for justice and on the ground for our community. We're going to keep fighting for our communities, and we won't rest until our families don't have to wonder if they will be able to feed their children. People need to understand that there's a ripple effect. People are going to have to decide whether they're going to pay their rent, whether they're going to pay their utilities, or whether they're going to buy food. A senior who receives $1,400 a month in income and fixed income and has to pay $900 a rent or $1,000 a rent and has to pay utilities, how are they going to purchase food without getting their SNAP benefits? This is a ripple effect. And if we think mental health is a problem right now, just wait and see what's going to continue happening. We hope that we get an answer by 12 o'clock so that families can get their SNAP benefits and we can start helping families as soon as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor. We are fortunate to have incredible lawyers in our community with the public's interest in mind. In a moment, we'll hear from one. Before I do so, I want to acknowledge the lawyers who represent us, who represent our communities on a daily basis. And so I'd like to just acknowledge Jeff Dana, the Providence City Solicitor, Matt Jerzyk, the Central Falls City Solicitor, and Frank Milos, who's the Pawtucket City Solicitor. These are hard jobs with a diverse client, but they are looking out for their community on a daily basis. We are grateful for their government service and the passion that they bring to this work every day. They rely on outside expertise as well, though, and we are blessed to have many highly effective, widely respected public interest lawyers here in our community who give of their time and expertise. The Democracy Forward Lawyers Committee for Rhode Island has been doing exceptional work this year. We're going to hear from Miriam Weisenbaum on behalf of the committee to talk about this case. Miriam?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Smiley, Mayor Rivera, the representatives from Pawtucket, and the biggest thank you to the 10 plaintiffs, the 3 cities, the nonprofits, the faith groups who stepped forward and stepped up. As we've heard, across this state, in fact across this country, people have been, to use the court's word, terrified, carrying out a nationwide fire drill to put food on the table while we all held our breath to see if this administration is going to keep funding the largest anti-hunger program in the United States. Well, at the same time, something else was happening. These plaintiffs, represented by the Lawyers Committee for Rhode Island, working with Democracy Forward, including the 2 amazing civil rights lawyers here with me today, Amy Rivera and Kevin Love Hubbard, we stood together, we called foul, and we met the administration in court. And why did we do that? Because what they are trying to do is unlawful. It's unconstitutional. And that's not just us saying. 2 distinguished federal courts agreed, which I think goes to show that together we can stand up and together we can win. So what's next? Well, we've seen a tweet from the president saying, and I quote, "I'll ask the court to clarify how we can legally fund SNAP as soon as possible." Okay, wait a minute. Let's get this straight. You could have done a thing. You wouldn't. You dangled food for children while the whole country panicked. And now you're going to claim to do the thing you could have done all along? And we're watching to see whether this game is going to be repeated. Because that's our job, is to stand up and call foul when it happens. We'll learn more at noon today about the administration and whether it is going to fully fund SNAP for November, which it has both the resources and the legal authority to do. And these lawyers and these plaintiffs are going to be watching every step of the way to hold this government accountable to the laws of this country. Thank you.
Now open up to questions for any of our speakers or the other plaintiffs. Pat.
Mayor Smiley, the lack of contingency planning at the federal level has been left leading to a real crisis in the community. It's apparent that the real heroes of this weekend moving forward are the small not-for-profits and cities like Providence, cities like Central Falls, cities like Woonsocket, who have reacted quickly. Is it time for the federal government to start moving a lot of these resources directly to impacting communities outside the federal government's purview and outside of state government?
Well, first of all, I don't accept the lack of contingency planning. I think this was exactly the point for the federal government. To use food for families and children as a tactic to extract concessions in a federal funding fight. And so, as Attorney Weizenbaum just said, they've had the ability and resources to do this from the beginning. But it is true that there are many block grant programs that are highly efficient and highly effective. And if the federal government can start to provide this funding directly to the states and to municipalities, we don't play games with kids' lives, and we would get this money out to our community immediately, efficiently, reliably, without holding a hungry child hostage.
Question for both Mayor Smiley and Mayor Rivera. The lines at food pantries, as we know, has been long prior to this crisis and long right now. Can you just both address the lines that both cities have been seeing that have had to turn people away due to the lack of food because of certain requests from people?
So you're right, there was food insecurity before this crisis. It has been exacerbated because of it, which is why we're surging resources directly to the Rhode Island Community Food Bank for them to then serve as the central hub to feed the over 30 food banks in Providence alone. In Providence, we have quite a few food banks, and some of them are only open a couple days a week, some of them are neighborhood-based, and so there are sometimes shortages and there are various hours of operations, which is why at our city's website, providenceri.gov/food, we have a dynamic, real-time, updated map so that residents can know that if a certain food bank is offline because they're waiting to be refilled and such, there's always an up-to-date list of who has food available that day or that scheduled hours of operation. But it is a serious need, and after this crisis passes, and I believe it will, that need's going to continue. And so I know my city will continue to provide resources to those food banks, and again, we're calling on the community to continue to help us. Rivera? Sorry.
So I think the system's broken. We have to start looking at the federal income guidelines with the cost of living, and this is something that I don't think people are paying attention to, because it's really hard for people to make sure that they're going to continue having food on their table. I have to say that in St. Paul's, I'm grateful that the St. Paul's Foundation is hosting, and we have other organizations that are hosting these food pantries. So the foundation is every 2 weeks. Progreso Latino is hosting something every week. And I have to say that I've gone to the one at the foundation, and even this week when we served people, no one left without food. Every person who showed up was able to give. And I was a little bit concerned because, we said we were going to feed about 800 to 1,000. We fed over 1,400 people. And I was concerned with the amount of food we were giving out, but I knew we had to do that. And thankfully we had enough food for everyone. I think it's important to share that people need to call 211 or should be calling 211. If they don't know who to call, over to the United Way is always here to help, to make sure to connect to the resources.
Definitely expect to hear back by noon, and if you don't, what happens?
Sure. I'm Kevin Hubbard. I'm with the Lawyers Committee for Rhode Island. The court ordered a response by noon, so we would expect that the government will comply with that order. I don't want to speculate as to what would happen if they don't, but they need to follow the court's order. It is set forth clearly both at the hearing and then at the government's request in a written order on Saturday. So I would expect a response by then.
Mayor, we've heard a lot of the perspective from the Democrats on how the Republicans are using this issue as leverage, politicizing the issue of SNAP and food assistance. On the other side, we've heard from the president consistently that it comes down to Democrats returning to the table and opening up talks again. Do you believe this issue solely falls on the current administration of Republicans, or do Democrats bear some of that weight too?
So, first of all, the presidency, the House, and the Senate are all controlled by the Republicans. And I don't know why it's the minority parties getting criticized for not doing the thing when they don't control a single branch of the federal government. Secondly, this has lasted so long now that even the discussion around a quote clean CR, the CR only has a couple weeks left in it. The government needs to get together and pass a new budget. And sure, I think everyone should be talking. We're talking about real lives in Providence, 200,000 residents, 25,000 of whom are on food stamps, 1 in 4 residents in Central Falls. These are real lives. Everyone, both parties, should absolutely be talking and working on a resolution. But the other thing that has happened, which has been the sticking point on behalf of the Democrats in Congress, has been the Affordable Care Act subsidies. We are now in open enrollment, and Americans, Rhode Islanders, Providence residents are starting to see the effect of those subsidies expire and the cost for their health insurance doubling, tripling, even worse, depending on family composition and where you are in this country. And so it is time for them to come up with a global resolution, but it is the Republicans in the driving seat, in the presidency, in the Senate, and in the House. So I do not find it credible to say the Democrats own a piece of this. They don't control a single House of Congress or the presidency. It's time for them to knock it off and get back to work.
Mayor, the governor passed is surging funds to try to fill the gap, especially for families in particular. It's November 3rd now. How many people have missed out on their PVD payments so far?
So I applaud the governor's emergency actions to try to get as much help as possible wherever possible. My understanding of his action it will apply only to families and is a fraction of the benefits, which is better than nothing, to be sure. And I'm grateful to him, and as a Rhode Islander, I'm proud that we're trying to pull funds from wherever possible. As for the quantity of families that were served through that state program or not, you have to ask the state. I'm not an expert on that. Great. Thank you, everybody.